First of all, I'd just like to go straight to introducing Aatif Awan. He's a founding and managing partner at Indus Valley Capital, a Pakistan-focused early-stage investment fund. He led the first investment round for startups such as Atoms, Airlift, Bazaar, and Aimfit, among others, and is a board director for all of them. Previously, Aatif was VP Growth and International at LinkedIn. What's exciting about Pakistan are the success stories that highlight grit, passion, hard work, and perseverance. And Aatif's journey is one of those very success stories. A story of a young man from Lodhra, Punjab, who had a dream, burned the midnight oil, and never stopped. He's now one of the most well-known and well-respected individuals for the startup ecosystem in Pakistan. He's an incredible mentor with a knack for recognizing just the right talent and a heart that wants to give back to the country of his birth, Pakistan. Aatif, it's an honor to have you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay, super. Aatif, I am going to jump into a question you wrote an article last year. It was published on LinkedIn on how Pakistani startups have arrived. I was reading it a couple of days ago, and there was one particular part in that article that you wrote which really stood out for me. I'm just going to read it out. Over here, so I'll just give you a bit of a context. In this article, Aatif was basically predicting how in 2021, some startups were going to fail, were going to have some sort of road bumps in their journey. And this is what he said in his article. That's not a bad thing, it happens everywhere. In fact, it's positive for the ecosystem in the long run, as people will learn from these experiences and go on to building something bigger and better. What's important is that founders not tie their identity to their startup success and be open to sharing the lessons learned, and for the ecosystem to celebrate the fact that they tried, rather than view it with a negative lens. I find that so lovely. Aatif, could you just elaborate a little bit about that?
Sure. So thank you for the generous intro, and thank you, Kolab, for organizing this. It's great to be here. A bit of a broader context. So this was actually I think the second article. The first one I wrote December 2019, which was talking about how Pakistani startups are the next big thing, and I got very excited. After LinkedIn, I took a year off, spent in Pakistan, started speaking with founders, and saw that opportunity and wanted to tell the world about it. So that was the genesis of that article. This one, the second one, Pakistani startups have arrived. I think we had a phenomenal 2021. If you look at 2016, 2018, Pakistani startups were raising $10 million a year. $10 million a year for the entire ecosystem, the entire country. Last 12 months, before the slowdown started, so Q2 2021 to Q1 2022, $500 million. If you benchmark it to MENA, 80-to-1 ratio back in 2016 to 2018, we 80 times more fundraising. Now it is down to somewhere between 6 and 7 to 1, which is exactly the ratio. It's part of maybe just 3 years. So that's been phenomenal. That was the genesis of Pakistani startups have arrived. Now, and this second article of Pakistani startups have arrived was written in December of 2020. Back then you could see, 2022 was going to be a slower year. That's what the statement that Sonia talked about came from. And then having just worked in the valley and seen, the cycle play out for many startups, it's important to go for the upside and the downside, not get too much bogged down and tie your identity to your work and your company. Because it becomes really hard. It's a burden, that's unnecessary to get. First and foremost, even when you want to build something, want to solve a problem, the best way to do it is when it's about something larger than yourself, right? And that allows you to attract others to join your mission, your vision. They want to be massive journey that allows you to find the right investors. There's lots of tools of that, right? But I think the best ones you find, they want to be part of the journey. So if you start with that, then you won't get them in that problem. What if that company failed, right? What if the outcome wasn't as big as somebody else? It doesn't matter. Right? Your journey is unique. It's yours. Most of the people, more than 99% of the people in the world never even tried to go on their own and build something. And I think just the fact that so many founders in Pakistani context that recently named and done that's incredible in itself. Success and failure is so many factors. There's not a huge part of it. We were just talking earlier about how with this current slowdown, a big function of where you stand is the timing of the last fundraise. Nothing else, right? So if you raise in March, you're sitting, pretty happy on a pool of capital. But if you raise in last year's March, obviously you spent a fair bit of time. So there's luck, there's extrinsic factors. You don't, take it too hard on that. Things are tough. And it's the longer journey, the lessons that you learn, do help you build something better. Keeping that long-term vision is really important.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Aatif. So basically, coming into the present, there's political instability, high inflation. How is the current predicament going to affect the ecosystem? And what are your predictions for the way forward? What do you think is going to happen?
Sure. So I think it's very important to level set, what's happening. And I think there's lots of noise. And this is one of the things that I hope we get better as an ecosystem is I feel there are very few voices who share publicly. And I think that's culture we need to change. And it's very, very smart people, people who work hard, who do it for the right reason, and they heads down and understand that. But they're not putting out their voices, and that gets filled with, people who maybe don't know exactly what's happening, but they like to say it anyway, right? Or a lot of gossip and noise, and so what's happening right now? There is a Pakistan situation and there's a global situation. So it's a Pakistan situation. We have, this happens simply, every 5 years, you manage the image crisis, you have to go to IMF, things get very, really tough, you have to think about new taxes, increase revenue, and this happens whenever your growth starts to exceed, a certain threshold, because we just don't have enough dollars to be able to support the imports that happen as a result of that growth. So we're in that again, right? And on top of that, the political uncertainty, the government change, and inflation, it's a global phenomenon hitting us as well. Now, when I was in San Francisco in May, when the slowdown really accelerated, and people with the link with Pakistan, US VCs, they actually don't even ask about this stuff. The only method I got was the week of, when the government change was happening, and then people were wondering, what does that mean? But really, that doesn't matter as much. And why does it matter as much is because if you're a VC betting on Pakistani startup ecosystem, it's a bet not so much on how much the economy grows. And this is very, very important, right? So Pakistan's economy right now is about $380 billion. $400 billion economy becomes maybe 500, maybe 600. But more importantly, you go from 2% to 20% online. Now you have massive online spending. That's what excites people. So that's very important. That's not impacted by what's happening this quarter or this year in the local economy. So the longer term thesis is very excited, and a lot of these are very excited. Now let's come to the global economy. And that's also sticking on the longer side. US market drives most of the world market when it comes to that, just versus economic power. So we have had the longest bull market in history, starting in 2009 and ended in 2022. COVID was just a blip, it didn't really become a bear market, especially when it comes to debt, like we have this quick shift. So now your longest the market, 1 year of the market. And right now, because this was so long, with end of Fed, especially COVID led Fed was Federal Reserve Bank to make even more money. So that's, like for the spike in inflation, that caused other securities to grow. We had a lot of speculation last week. It's very anything you did, you just create something. You already know like something. So I think there's an unwinding of that happening. That was not overdue. Now we started seeing inflation spike, like late last year. Initially, the normal suspect was this starts again. That happened. The case, and this is what makes it so tough. People don't know about I didn't see it coming. Like I don't have to now really react to it. Even though it's very easy, right? And it's not really what the difference is because of what you are already on the day. And what made it worse is that I think it makes and that's what I think it's exactly that. Now look at this is global. It's causing it's causing. It's very high. It's 40-year high. All the US stays around 2%. It's very good at controlling inflation. So that has happened. And the public markets expecting that the way Fed controls inflation is they start increasing the interest rates. And that's exactly what they do, right? And you're seeing a rise of capital markets that is not necessarily do it. What that does is it makes, treasuries, which gives you a fixed percentage, right? Those rates go higher, bonds do better, but stocks get a beating. So public markets are anticipating that US public markets, Nasdaq was down 30% year to date. Very good companies that have plenty money in the bank, doing well, but down that much. 2021's tech IPOs, they're down like anywhere from 65 to 55%. All of them. And you take that example and say, okay, public markets are down so much. If you buy the same haircut tech company prior to the company that raised maybe 500 million last year, maybe it should be worth 100 million, right? And then that's what's happening. And private markets take the cues from public markets, particularly the late stage investors. So Tiger Global and SoftBank who tend to be crossover, they invest in public stocks, they invest in startups.
Passive losses, they have pulled back. So your Series D round stopped happening a few months ago. Then Series B investors looking at that, they're like, oh, these guys are not able to write checks anymore. We better slow down our pace. Because if we invest in a company 12 months, 18 months from now, who's gonna invest in that? And then that comes to Series A. And to some extent seed as well, but I think seed is more protected than later stages. So that's what's like happening in the markets. Truly global phenomenon. I think US is the worst hit. MENA is somewhat but we I think are seeing a disproportionate impact because of our alignment with the US. So many US VCs invested in Pakistan, and also because we're in emerging market who get hit harder in a downturn. So now, what are the implications? The implications are that there is a downturn. Everybody now accepted it. The question is you have to predict how long it will last, which is very hard. But the mistake you can make is saying oh, this is going to be 3 to 6 months or 9 months, and then it turns longer. You can't plan for that. So you have to err on the side of caution, and you just basically assume it's 18 months, maybe 24 months, and you have to plan accordingly and survive. So what that means is if you can raise capital, don't obsess about valuations too much, raise the capital, right? That's getting increasingly hard in this market. And then, just extend your runway. So that comes from, maybe you can do less, experimental stuff. Maybe you have to just, slow down your growth rate. Maybe for some companies, you have to unfortunately let some people go. And that's what you're seeing play out. And I think you'll see more of it. And then at some point, it's the companies that survive, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So they will come out stronger and they'll keep going. And then you have the market resume and VC funding will start to accelerate again.
Great. I'm just going to ask one last question and then I'll open the floor for, we have time for questions from the audience. Okay, great. Aatif, I'm going to take a slightly different track. I wanted to ask you, in your journey, and you have had a very, and still have a very inspiring journey. You're giving back now at this stage in your life. And tell me one thing, when the chips were down in your life, during your career when you were just starting out, what was your internal dialogue? How did you pick yourself back up? And what tools did you use to get back out there and not give up on your dream and your vision for yourself?
Thank you. So I'd say I've been very fortunate. Like I think people I know have been in much tougher situations. I think the early part, which generally is true, like when you are in your early 20s, I think it's just you're figuring yourself out. You're not yet confident. You haven't like built stuff. You don't know what you're really good at. You're exploring. There's this framework: explore versus exploit. So early on, we explore what you're good at, what you like, what you enjoy. Then you can exploit that, right? So I think like the first phase of my career, which was at Microsoft, on the one hand, very fortunate that did my undergrad here, went to US grad school. First job is at Microsoft in 2000. I did an internship in 2004. And 2005, I got a full-time job. Right? And 2005, Microsoft, it started to get a bad rap, but it was still, considered a good company. But you joined there, and then you realize that actually, Microsoft, it's a very large company, and back then, I think it wasn't being very successful at new ventures. It was moving very, very slow. So you start to question, are you in the right place? Whether, you're learning enough. I was in office and they took like 2 years to ship the first release. It was like in software, you'd be like, that's crazy. 2 years, like entire companies like go from zero to raising $100 million. Like, what are we talking about? And this large team, not much was moving. And I think like that was challenging.
Yeah.
What makes it tougher is like most people who go to the US and many other foreign countries, you are, an employer is sponsoring your visa. So you can't move, right? So then you see others, who have the flexibility, interesting stuff happening in the Bay Area, but you're not. And then I was about to, okay, I got my green card in 2008, I believe. And I was like, okay, I can move now. And then the financial crisis hit, right? So then you can't move, and now you're stuck for another couple of years. And now it's like, I really know I don't want to be here, but like, what am I going to do? So I think like I went through that. It wasn't like I think it wasn't that bad compared to a lot of other people who've had tougher situations. But I feel everybody has their own growth path, and like there are a few things to learn. Like one is like as long as you're going to compare yourself to others, you're going to be unhappy. No matter how successful you are, there's going to be somebody else more successful. There's going to be somebody else richer than you, and so on. And it's incredible. I mean, you see that and Twitter is such like a window into humanity, which is amazing. You see literally like billionaires being insecure and like tweeting at each other, like guys, really like it's internal. So that tells you. I mean, people like among the top 10 richest people in the world, and you have Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos going at each other. And all that. So that shows you that you can't just wish like, oh, if I was that person, I'd be happier. It's not true. It's not true, right? And that can apply to many situations. It can apply to career, it can apply to personal situation, and so on. But ultimately, the battle is only internal. And I think like that was the hardest thing. Like it takes you, like some hiccups and falling down to figure that out. But I think once you've done that, it's very, life becomes easier because. And this is another thing where like once you get successful, let's say you've done like a successful startup or you got to a very senior level in a company, I think what holds people back sometimes is like you in your head keep that bar of my next thing has to be better than the last. And there's no rule that says that, right? It's just internal because you don't feel good about yourself. And I feel like if you give that up, then it's like, so what? Like you start a VC fund in Pakistan, maybe your timing was wrong, like maybe your startups don't work out, maybe the like there's war, and Pakistan gets involved, and like, so what? Like the point is like the time you spend, like, did you have fun? Were you able to work with others or not? So I think like that shift was really, really helpful.
I have a question on Web3. Do you see it as the next big thing, and what's the whole consensus about it, and what do you think about it personally? And the next question to you would be transition from startup, career from startup phase to VCs. Since in Pakistan, I've seen that local VCs do not really hire. I'll take an example of Indus Valley itself. Like you do not have a massive team, and there's like a small setup, and mostly it's the same for local VCs itself. And how do you see the career in VC industry itself, and of course the country?
Sure. So there is no consensus. I think it's like pretty controversial. So I'm not that involved with Web3 or familiar with it, because in Pakistan context, I think like we are on the hierarchy of needs, like doing some very fundamental stuff yet. I feel there has been a lot of excess when it comes to Web3 and crypto, and part of it was the reasons I mentioned earlier. And there's some very smart people who believe in it and have been working at it that I respect a lot. And there have been like 10x more people who are just in it for the wrong reasons, and there's a lot of scammers, and there's a lot of noise, like just like trying to get rich quick sort of stuff, and that stuff never ends well. Like it just doesn't happen that these things don't work out. There've been other fads before. So I think what we are seeing is like any projects where like that, hey, we'll all make money, we'll all get rich was the fundamental reason, like those in this environment are not doing well at all. NFTs in general, like I don't feel like creating artificial scarcity around that works. And like I don't know if you're following the AI developments, but there is 𝗛𝗛, for instance, like it's very advanced AI. You can give it a text, right? So you can say, give me a picture of, like a 60-year-old man standing next to Minar-e Pakistan, like pretty complex state with a goat around, like whatever you make up, right? And it does a pretty decent job. And it's very interesting the way it does is it actually doesn't have a concept of these things. It doesn't start with drawing a man. It starts with random pixels, and then it starts iterating, and eventually keeps asking like, oh, is there a man in the picture? No, and it gets there, right? And it's fascinating. Just if you search 𝗛𝗛 on Twitter, you'll see. And you can ask it to draw it like, how Picasso would have drawn it, and it will get that and all that. So with that, I think the cost of creating art is going to go so low that NFTs, I don't think will do it. Celebrities who are already have scarcity by virtue of it, they don't need NFTs. They can create it in any form and they'll sell. So that will do fine. I think like there is some very, very interesting stuff happening, but the bear market will reset it. For somebody in Pakistan, I think if you're passionate about it, definitely go for it. But don't bet your career early on that. I think there are like lots of other interesting problems to work on. The VC career stuff is interesting, right? So I feel if you're super early in your career, generally speaking, you want to build some stuff first and learn that, and you'll do more, then join VC. And like we started to hire now, like it will grow, that will scale, that will happen. But the problem is, look, it's hard to be really good at VC. It's a very hard thing to do. It's easy to look smart in like 2 years time frame in VC, because if you're just guessing, like if somebody else will like invest in this company 12 to 24 months from now, it's like an easier problem if you think about it, right? Because it's a Canadian beauty contest. You're like, who else will like this company? That's when you tend to do, Stanford graduates, like people, like you start to look for those things. But if you do the 10-year view, it's like who will make a lasting company, who will create a true business. It's very hard to predict early on. So it's hard. And I think like that's where, yes, you can learn a lot, but I think there are other things you want to learn first. And because the team sizes by definition are small, so you learn a lot more early on in your career by working with a lot more people. And then I think transition to VC.
So, given your situation in Pakistan, so I'm as an art engineer startup, and you can see is that we were in the field for different for clients. What we see right now is given there's a decision coming in, and it's now with that. So, with our product, what we saw, we started to look markets where we see here America. quite significant response to their business. One thing that I really want to know right now for VCs to come and invest in this turmoil in the economy right now, and the fact that opportunities which are brought up, we are reaching out because it's based on the retail analytics and everything. So the global outreach right now and application of your product is higher than the Pakistan. So being an early stage startup, what do you think from VC's point of view you should prepare around? If you right now, this in a couple of months, you're getting an opportunity to go forward. So what should you prepare for a VC to come and which you want to scale it out? So for them to invest in a Pakistani startup and scale it to the global markets.
Sure. So I think first thing, people are still investing. So it's not that nobody is investing. In fact, I feel the earliest stage seed, it's a great time to invest. 2019 was and early 2020 was a great time to invest. That's when we invested in 𝗪𝗪, in Bazaar, and like some of the companies that did fairly well over the next couple of years. So VCs will invest. I think international expansion, it's interesting. So it depends on what your business model is. For something like an operationally intensive business like that's not recommended because it costs a lot to launch a heavy operation. If you're a software business selling abroad, it's great because I think your cost of making it is still low, and you can still sell it anywhere. So I think from that perspective, it works. And Pakistan needs, I think we have seen the consumer companies come up, right? E-commerce, B2C, B2B, fintech. What we need is, like success stories on the SaaS side where we're building here, selling to the rest of the world. So I think that's actually exciting.
It's a hybrid mode between hardware and software. That's what I started with. So, but the global application of this technology that we're working on made in Pakistan, it's for the first time after Pakistan, but it's been adopted in likes of America, Europe, even in France. So basically, it's been happening there as well. And the adaptation, the readiness for people to adapt is way much higher than we do here in Pakistan. So in that period, it's just been like 6 months for us to start off and get this one here in Pakistan. We're getting more response from the world. So for that level of scalability, we need to scale it up.
Yeah, sure. I think it depends on the specifics of the idea, but I know a hardware company, like that was actually just designing in Pakistan, manufacturing in China, very successfully selling to all over the world. And again, it's easier if it's not consumer. Consumer hardware is very, very tough. Yeah, so B2B is easier. I think you can sell to anywhere. It does help to build your go-to-market team in the target markets. So hiring people there will help, but definitely, why not?
But will they be willing to invest in a company in Pakistan that's working in technology and exploring the world?
Yeah. I think like there's nothing against, as long as it's a compelling story, there is like a path to building a great business. VC's job is to underwrite all sorts of risks. So if it's a compelling thing, I think people are willing to undertake different types of risks.
My friend software, my co-founded line, which is a mainstream brand. So my question is, as we see, how do you think of the D2C space? And do you think we could have D2C aggregators come up in Pakistan?
No, D2C is great. I feel like Pakistan's demographics, culturally, like we just don't have that many options. So if you can create amazing products, I think there's opportunity to build generational brands in Pakistan. And we've seen that happen on fashion side, right? If you look at what 𝗪𝗀𝗀𝗁 did, like nobody was looking at men's clothing.
So
and yes, it wasn't online, back then that wasn't possible, but like he used his celebrity to create an amazing brand. And then many people have done it, right? Yeah. So I feel that opportunity is there. I think you guys are doing pretty well on that front as well. So so definitely very interested in that playing out. The aggregator stuff, it's a bit trickier because it does take a lot of initial capital to roll up, because essentially you're acquiring these companies. So if you have to acquire a company for like, even if it's like very early, like 10 million, 20 million, 30 million, and you want to roll up 5 or 10 of these, like it adds up very quickly. So in this environment, a bit harder, but I think it will come to Pakistan. Maybe in a couple of years, you will have that opportunity. That could be a good exit strategy for people who want to build, DTC brands today.
we have time for one more question.
think there was one here.
So I'm sure that your journey must have many startups. So is there one particular startup that really stood out for you and what for that startup?
It's hard to pick one, but like you can look at our portfolio. I think Airlift, has been pretty special because the thing that I love about Airlift's founding team is like they started in January of 2019. Like back then, actually thinking about doing a mass scale consumer business that will require a lot of funding. Not many people were willing to do that, right? And they did it very well, and bringing first round to Pakistan, leading large series. So definitely like with partial, but love what they've been able to do. It love how when COVID hit, they mass ran the business. Basically, they had to make that decision, given you cannot make the business work at 50% utilization, which is the best you could have hoped in COVID, if that. So we decided to pause it and then to figure out next thing. I think they've executed very well on that. Again, have to do a pullback because of the markets, but I think very strong execution, very, very ambitious team. Culture is extremely strong. So love them. I think Bazaar is another one that, like huge fans of, the kind of culture they build and what they're building. So both of them are pretty special, I would say.
Okay, super, Aatif. Thank you so much for coming. We really enjoyed the session. Thank you everyone for being a part of this. Thank you so much.
Thank you all.